Welcome and thank you for joining today's Inspire for Vouchers Office Hours Sessions for PHAs. Before we begin, please ensure you have opened the Zoom chat panel by using the associated icon on the bottom of your screen. You may submit written questions throughout the presentation, and these will be addressed during the Q&A. To submit a written question, select Hosts and Panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel, enter your question in the message box provided, and send. To submit verbal questions, you may raise your hand by navigating to the bottom of your screen and pressing the Raise Hand button. Please note that all audio connections are muted at this time until the Q&A session. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the Inteller Events host. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Ryan LaFollette, Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Real Estate Assessment Center. Please go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. I see the numbers still climbing, so appreciate everyone jumping on for this first of our office hours in order to help prepare housing authorities to implement NSPIRE for the voucher program. I know that hopefully you felt some relief when the implementation date was postponed to October 1, 2025. I know that we were in the sense, although we were scrambling to be ready to implement it, but I appreciate the breathing room on our end to be able to offer up many training sessions for the community between now and implementation. And so I know for the majority of you on this call, you probably have not implemented the NSPIRE standards for your voucher program yet. I know there's a handful of PHAs who have. But as the team will share with you shortly, there is a schedule of through the end of this calendar year of additional opportunities to learn on specific parts of implementation, and then also some more general office hours time for you all to engage. This is the first time that we have aligned all of our physical condition standards across HUD's portfolio of programs, and so it's really important for us to get this right. And so I'm thankful to all of the REAC team, all of our partners over in PIH that are on this call with us today, from the Office of Public Housing and Voucher Programs, Office of Field Operations, everyone that we have to work together within HUD to help prepare you all for this big program change. And so with that, thanks. We are really looking forward to your feedback, and we'll use that to help shape further sessions down the road. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn the mic over to Fitz. So thanks again for joining today.
Thank you, Ryan, and good afternoon and good morning to some out there, and welcome. As Ryan indicated, we're looking forward to these interactive sessions today. It's a series of sessions, and we'll go through that in a minute in terms of what we're trying to achieve and lay those out for you, et cetera, and what we plan to do today. I'm Brian FitzPatrick, and I chair the NSPIRE V program here in PIH and REAC, and it's a great honor and privilege to have that opportunity to work with all of you and work with all of the various teammates that you'll meet here today, as Ryan indicated, not only from REAC, but also from other key PIH offices in OFO and OPHVP and others. So at this time, we want to, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So here's kind of our run of show today, if you will. We'll do introductions. We'll introduce the folks that are available on this call today for all of you to help address your questions and items that you want us to help resolve. So we'll do a quick intro of those. Then we'll talk about, what we're doing through these office hour sessions and basically the schedule of those, not only today, but the ones in the future. We'll talk about some of the logistics relative today and kind of how it works. And there's some additional things in the deck which we'll send out relative to resources. And of course, this entire operation, if you will, is about questions. It's about answering your questions and fielding the items that you have on your plate. So next slide, please. As you can see, there's an array of various folks on this call from PIH, from REAC, and also from OPHVP, as well as OFO and each of these individuals has an array of different experiences across the voucher program that impacts all of you. And so we're trying to bring that subject matter expertise to you. So all of these folks are on the call today. We're here to answer your questions. And we know that there's going to be specific questions, asked around standards or around other programmatic elements or around software, et cetera. So we have a lot of different talent here today in terms of where we're going, in terms of, facilitating the session today. So next slide, please. So really, what are we trying to achieve through these sessions and what have you? So, we're really trying to, through these office hours and these related webinars, we're really just trying to listen to you and learn from you. And hopefully we can bring some of our knowledge about the NSPIRE V program to all of you as well. So that interaction is key. We're looking forward to that, that discussion between us and between the questions that you have and all the different subject matter experts that I introduced earlier, so we can get some of that, interaction between us all. So, shown here is kind of a temporal look of the various general office hours, targeted office hours, and webinar sessions that we plan to have over the next few months. What's listed here is only the ones through the rest of calendar year 2024. We actually have office hours and webinar sessions planned for starting in January and forward, as well as we all march together towards, the October 1st, 2025 deadline. And we'll update that and provide that look of additional sessions. But really what we're really trying to do is, show this docket of what we got on our plate. And as you can see, we have the webinars, and webinars are more of a lecture series, if you will, where we're trying to present a lot of materials. For example, in December, we're going to have a webinar specific on smoke alarms, because that's a big change for the portfolio. So we're going to talk about that in detail and then have Q&A. But we also have office hours that are targeted for specific sessions as well. So for example, the November 6th session is on carbon monoxide and heating sources, and that will be specific on that, as well as the December 4th will be about lessons learned that we've heard from all of you so far about what's working well, what's not. And so we can summarize that and kind of lay that out for the group. So that's kind of what we're trying to achieve in terms of these various sessions and the schedule that we've laid out for this office hours and our coming webinars as well. Next slide, please. And then what we're trying to illustrate here is basically, well, how will these sessions work and how will today work, right? So we talked a little bit about the general office hour sessions and how they will work, as well as some of the topic session that we will have on specific areas. And so again, today is about general. So you guys can ask an array of different questions. As you can see, we have an array of subject matter experts here to answer those questions across that, that dynamic, if you will. As you've seen, each session will begin with some opening remarks. You heard Ryan, and I'm kind of following up here, and then we'll we introduce the SMEs who are online to answer your questions. And the way this will facilitate is we have a chat box. You all should have access to the chat box through the MS Teams. And as the facilitator Ahmed mentioned earlier, you can raise your hand and do an oral discussion as well. So, next slide, please. Again, we will send this deck out, but here's some additional information that you will have access to relative to standards or training that we put together for this. We also have some information on, carbon monoxide alarms, et cetera. So they're all listed here. The one thing I do want to point is the inspire@hud.gov email at the top of the list here, which would be, following today's call, if you have specific questions, et cetera, please reach out to that inbox to ask those specific questions. Next slide, please. What you'll see in the back of this are the links to the future sessions and today's session in terms of hyperlinks to get to these sessions. We're in the process of finalizing those links as well for the webinars that we introduced earlier. So just a little bit more of how do I get to these sessions rolling forward. Next slide, please. And also for today and going forward, this is a feedback mechanism for today's session. There's a URL at the top, or you can use the QR code listed here to give us feedback about what's working in this session, what we need to improve upon, what do you want to hear that we didn't cover, suggestions for improving them. It's really great to get that feedback from all of them. Next slide, please. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pause and I'm going to turn it over to Jogchum Poodt, and he's going to facilitate the Q&A session. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Fitz. Just want to make sure I just put in the chat the link to the feedback from the prior slide. At some point before you sign off today, if you wouldn't mind going to that and giving us some feedback, it is always super helpful. So we've had a few questions come in already in the chat. Ahmed, I can't see, has anybody raised their hand in the from the attendees that would want to ask any questions?
As of right now, there is a raised hand.
Okay, let's go to the raised hands first, and then we'll go through questions in the panel.
Today's information is only pertaining to just general information for the whole NSPIRE today.
Hey there, was that Antonio?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, if you wouldn't mind, when you're unmuted, if just state your name, that would be very appreciated. Today's session is specifically for the NSPIRE for Vouchers program, not covering public or multifamily housing. So if you have any questions about your voucher program, we're here and we have subject matter experts on the line to answer them.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for attending.
Mm-hmm.
2 additional raised hands.
Ahmed, if you could go to the next.
We have a raised hand from Christine. And Christine has lowered her hand. We have a raised hand from Tony.
Hi, Jodi Speer with the Housing Authority of Contra Costa County in California. We're getting ready to implement NSPIRE. We're all on board and all that. The question for me is, what is the plan to create some sort of, interactive or comprehensive, notification plan for landlords? It's one thing to implement it in public housing. It's where the landlords, we get it, but to change from HQS to NSPIRE, you have a little more, you're digging a little deeper in the material. How do we explain this to people?
Hi, Tony. This is Marcie Vega.
Hi, Marcie. How are you?
Hi. Good. Thank you. So I'm on the call with my colleagues from the PIH program office, and I'll be asking them to weigh in too. But yes, you are correct, right? How do we get this out to the landlords is one of the areas that we are actually working on right now. So there are efforts underway to essentially market this to landlords. And myself and I believe Laure Rawson, who's also on the panel, are basically working on what do we have already within HUD's, web pages and such, to have resources available to landlords. And then we're also thinking of other ways that, again, it's a marketing, it's a re-education. We know it is going to be a bit of a culture change, but we think that ultimately landlords, again, just shifting to a new inspection protocol, keeps them on the program, keeps them engaged, keeps them interested. So yes, those plans are underway. We're still kind of like just putting together framework. We have, some kind of rough sketches out there, but yes, this is part of the ultimate implementation. And I'm
That's
sorry, because
great.
I'm
Hopefully,
speaking to you and I'm also monitoring. I'm also looking at the chat too. Yeah, yes, there will be training set. It'll be a whole built out system, right? So marketing, hopefully we're able to even pull together some of these kinds of like webinars, interactive, where we can take some questions and then really see how we best utilize the field offices, to maybe even host like listening sessions and things like that.
yeah, that'd be great. And if we can get it far enough in advance where we can send out regular things to our landlords just to kind of get them ready,
Yeah, we were even
the
talking
whole
about
thing
that.
is, yeah, advance notice is what's going to kind of stop the revolt, I guess is the best way to put it. But
Right.
people won't like having to get more obligations, if you will. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing some of that.
Right. And I think probably, even things like if we have these like kind of talking points that we could disseminate out to the housing authorities, and then the way that you communicate with your landlords, whether it's, your check statements or whatnot, so that you can just drop them into that. And again, just,
Yeah.
you're right. The more information and the earlier we have it out there, I think, again, it's just, easing everyone through this change.
And Tony and Marcie, thank you for the discussion. Yeah. And one of the future webinar and office hours we have targeted in the early part of calendar year 25 is specifically on landlords as well. So great question.
Right.
Thank you. And thank you, Marcie, for jumping in.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, everyone.
We have additional hands raised. One hand from Michael.
Hi, Michael Darzik, coming in from Belmont Housing here in Buffalo, New York. Kind of piggybacking off of the previous question, our agency specifically has a lot of seasoned landlords and program participants overall. I know that you had spoke on creating, an informational packet and webinars, things like that. Is there any sort of plan within that to create almost like a change log of, all right, this is what was covered under HQS. Here's some new additional things that are covered under NSPIRE. Just because we have been getting, quite a few questions regarding, what's going to be different with the new regulations.
Hi, this is Marcie again. So you mean like a bridge, right? So HQS, NSPIRE V, probably some of the significant areas, and then what's, in terms of walking through what has changed. No, I think that's great. I'm not sure if we actually have something like that just in general, but again, I think that's very important too.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've been working on some internal documents, but just to have some sort of standardized, informational documentation, just because there's a few PHAs that we coordinate here in the Buffalo area, and just to make sure that our message is the same across the board.
Perfect. So a crosswalk between HQS and NSPIRE. Okay, perfect.
Hi, this is Dana. I'm Dana Kitchen. I'm a program analyst in REAC. Yeah, we do not have any plans for a crosswalk. There's just two. It's not. You can't draw a direct comparison. So at this point, we've had some people try to do that, but we can't we just can't draw a direct comparison. There are a lot of similarities, but there are also some big differences, and we just have been unable to do something like that. And there are no future plans for doing that in REAC anyway. But I do know that this is kind of addresses the last gentleman's question about sort of working with landlords about it as well. I would say that, you know, on the voucher side, on the HCV side and the PBV side, there was far less changes. I like to say my cheesy line of that NSPIRE was heavily inspired by HQS. The majority of the changes, or the big changes, happened with UPCS. They had many changes they had to overcome or deal with, but HQS is very similar to NSPIRE. I think a lot of what has changed is there's a lot more direction and a lot more process, and it's a lot less vague in terms of walking through an inspection and going through each one of the standards, you know, resulting in, of course, each one of them taking a little bit more time and focusing a little bit more on each one of the standards and what the process is for those and observing the deficiencies. But it's heavily inspired by HQS. So I think there's going to be less changes than the voucher program thinks there's going to be, and less of a revolt, if we're calling it that, than I think there's going to be if we don't sort of pose it that way to the landlords, because it is. There are few changes. It's going to take some getting used to at first, and I agree with that. And the inspections are going to take longer. There are some changes for sure, but it's not going to be as big of a change for the voucher side as we think it is going to be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question from Robert.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for giving us this presentation. I'm actually with a field office in PIH. General question, when housing authorities inspect under HQS, they have an inspection form and they to correlate the results of the inspection. Under NSPIRE, with the voucher program, is there going to be a new inspection form that they could use during the inspection process to document the inspection?
Yeah, we've already created one, and there's been one out there since last HUD has created one. It's pretty simple, and it's not an OMB approved form, so it's not technically replacing the 52580 or the HQS form, but it is a checklist that does note the failure of deficiencies, or the finding of deficiencies, and it is located on HUD's NSPIRE website. And it can be found in sort of 3 different formats: fillable PDF, a regular PDF, and an Excel fillable form. And it is available for PHAs to use and has been and at any time.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And just to add to Dana's answer, there are links to those checklists in this slide deck that everyone on the call will get as well. I also saw a chat question come in asking if this event is being recorded and will be made available. It will. Ahmed, if you could turn it over to the next person with their hand raised.
We have another hand raised from Nikki.
Hi, this is Nikki with the Housing Authority down in Southeast Missouri. I just had a quick general question. We are aware of the fillable forms that are on there. We have printed those off and kind of overviewed them. My question is, I was under the impression that the pass or fail had to be submitted into REAC. So I keep getting these emails from Inspire, and at the bottom of a lot of them, it says help activating your Inspire account. So I'm curious if we need to, if we as an HCV agency needs to do this, or if that is just for public housing, and if each inspector has to have a username and password in REAC to be able to submit these inspections.
So I can take this one, Jogchum, at least to start. So there's no reporting to HUD requirements for the HCV program at this time. There's no changes to that aspect between the previously defined HQS and Inspire. So you guys won't be reporting any results to HUD from your Inspire HQS inspections. You won't be reporting any pass fail. You won't be reporting any, quality control inspections to us at this time. Nothing's being reported to HUD. An app is being developed, and I'm not going to speak to where it is at this stage, and someone else can probably speak to that. So there is an account that can be created if you use HUD's app for the HCV inspections. And it's going to be similar, very similar to probably more like the checklist than the public housing app itself. So I don't think those emails that you're getting are probably for the HCV program. But no, there's no reporting requirement on the HCV side for any inspection results.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, they're reporting basically, which we do kind of report those, they go on the 5.8 and get submitted to PIC. So we'll continue to do that when Inspire starts.
Yep. So the nomenclature of HQS will not be changing. So it will get a little bit confusing at first, but HQS is not going anywhere. It's just been redefined as Inspire standards, and we can talk more in depth about that at another office hours. But so those two fields on the 50058, one says the last date, or the date of last inspection, or the date of last HQS inspection. I can't remember exactly. And the date, the last, or the inspection last passed, or the date the HQS inspection last passed. Those are the two fields that you're going to continue to report on your 50058. There may be one extra field that I think is a PHA choice field for inspections. But those are the two required fields on the 50058. Any CMAP reporting in terms of inspection reports that you need to report out on the indicators for inspections will continue to be required of you. And then anything, of course, HUD requests of any specific or particular PHA, but no general results of HCV inspections are going to need to be reported. So nothing is changing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Another raised hand from Jim Bowling.
Yes, sir. My name is Jim Bowling, and I'm with Kentucky Housing Corporation. I posted 3 clarifications in the chats, and I was just curious if you guys can see those and if those will be answered, or if I need to ask them verbally in regards to some actual clarifications on the standards.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, we are going through the chat questions, just trying to get a couple themes out. But if there is one in particular that you'd like to ask, please do go ahead.
Well, just for instance, October the 1st, I'm going to a property that I've inspected before. It has, it's an older home, large home that's been converted into a 4-plex. There's only 1 meter base. It's in apartment 1. I'll be going to apartment 3. So the tenant is not going to have access to the service panel. Am I reading it correctly that that would be a fail item?
I'll take this question. Hey, it's Bobby. Hi, Jim.
Hey,
How are you doing, buddy?
hey,
Long
Bobby,
time
what's
no
up,
see.
buddy? Good talking to you.
Not much. Yeah, we used to work together. Yeah, Jim, there's no requirement for a unit to have a service panel. It's just if it's present, you're going to inspect for those. So the obstructed language that's in the that deficiency that you're talking about is only if something's blocking a panel that's in your unit. So
Gotcha.
as far as you're concerned, you're just going to check it if it's in the unit. Very similar to if we were in a high rise apartment, you wouldn't go down to the basement and check the service panel there. So we're going to treat it the same way.
Gotcha. Another couple, Bobby, real quickly. A post-78 home has peeling paint on the porch, soffit, fascia, walls. Do I take the wall exterior standard as it is written, where it says the 10 square feet pertains to the walls? It doesn't mention windows, fascia, doors, porch floors. So am I really just looking for the walls on a post-78 home?
Yeah, if it's post-78, you're not going to apply the potential lead-based paint standard whatsoever. You're just going to use the wall exterior and assess it with that.
And it'll just pertain to the walls. So I'm really not looking. If I get there and it's a brick home and it's got peeling paint on the fascia and soffit, does that count as a component to the wall, or are we literally going wall?
No, it's literally the wall.
Gotcha. And the last one, Bobby, is, and this one's kind of confusing to me. I don't know if we're missing something on this, but we've tossed this back and forth amongst my manager and director. I arrive at a unit, it's got 20 steps going up to the entry door. There's no evidence of any prior installation of a handrail. That would pass, correct?
It would pass. That's deficiency 4 under the handrail, and there's a long drawn-out explanation about why it's there and what it says, but essentially you're exactly right. Deficiency 1 is if there's evidence a handrail was there, but now it's missing. But deficiency 4 is in a place where a handrail has never been installed before. There's some work in the future we're going to do with that, but for right now, it's going to be a pass under the HCV program, so no deficiency. Gotcha.
And the last one, Bobby, a quick one. On a retaining wall, of course, this property is over, it's built on a tier of a mountain. You know, I'm in Eastern Kentucky, so there's like 3 buildings. They're built on a mountainside. So you have a lower tier retaining wall, the next building retaining wall, and then the next building. They have a probably 8 to 10 foot retaining wall between those structures. Is any leaning away from the field, that's definitely would be a fail item, correct? It doesn't have to like show crackage in the retaining wall. Any significant leaning, we're talking any type of lean whatsoever, correct? Away from
right.
The field side.
If it's 90 degrees from the base of the slope, right?
Gotcha.
Then that's where we're gonna step in. So yeah, you're reading it exactly correctly.
Gotcha. All righty. That's what I needed, Bobby. Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
We have another raised hand from Adrian.
Yes, Adrian here from Los Angeles County Development Authority. Piggybacking on the question regarding the checklist, the 52580, we have the 52580A. That's it's a really good tool for new owners and even for staff when we're in the field to follow our guidelines. The checklist from NSPIRE, that I'm familiar with that as well, would that be expanded to include a version like the 52588 that we could provide to a tool to owners or for ourselves? Thank you.
At this time, we don't have plans to expand it, just because we took the standards and tried to consolidate it as much as we could, and it's still 7 or 8 pages. But the standards themselves are in PDF versions and can be used. They are on the website as well. But I will take that as feedback. You're not the first to suggest that. So I will take that as feedback back to the team, and we'll see what we can do. It's an interesting feat to accomplish, but I will take it back. Thanks, Adrian.
We have another hand by Robert.
Yes, I'm LeBaron Fenton with Regional 4 Housing Authority. And we had sent an appeal in on June 19th, and we never did hear anything back. And I was just trying to see where do we go to find out that information.
So there's no appeals in the HCV program, so I'm not sure
Okay,
what you mean.
It's public housing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone on the call that can address that.
Okay.
Well, you could always email inspire@hud.gov with the specifics, and somebody should be able to answer that question.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah, Robert, we'll get back to you on that. We've noted your question, so thank you.
Thank you.
So we've had a good number of questions come in through the chat. I'm going to start posing a couple of these questions. I think the panelists have seen many of them as well, if you haven't been looking at the chat. But I want to ask a question out to one person that sent us a message, I think that would help also answer a question that was asked earlier about how to get landlords ready. Ann Muller, I think from Michigan, sent in a note that they've already implemented their HQS Inspire standards in their voucher program. And I'm wondering if, Ann, if you'd like to speak to how you got your landlords ready for the audience. And Ahmed, if you need to turn her on. Ann, are you still online with us?
She ghosted you, Jogchum.
That's okay.
No,
so
she would have to raise her hand so that Ahmed could get her on board.
Yeah, I think Ann might be from Mijda. I think Mijda, I'm aware, has launched their HQS Inspire standard. And her comment back to us was that Michigan sent a letter to all landlords with a POC for questions. And if you went to Mijda's website, you could see they have, I think, what looks to be a pretty great explanation of how they are implementing the Inspire standards in their HQS process. So some of the other good questions that have come in, there's been a handful about smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. On the smoke alarm, there's been multiple questions regarding if we just did an inspection under HQS in December when the requirement that they be hardwired kicks in, will those fail? And if they do, is there still a 24-hour correction? One of the questions came in from somebody that highlighted their territory is very large. So I think what would be helpful is to speak to specifically some of the ways to verify that a deficiency has been corrected around smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. I'll throw that out to our standards folks. Bobby.
Yeah, thanks. So what I'll say to that is it's, the logistics of trying to verify a 24-hour fix is going to be vary from place to place, depending on your admin plan. So if your admin plan requires a physical reinspection, that's going to be quite challenging. And the way I used to handle that was I would pick up the phone in the unit when I found it, and I'd let the owner know, hey, I'm going to be in town for so long. Can you maybe fix this, before I leave town? I'll come back and check it, right? We to handle those 24 hours that way. Another way is, HUD allows people to certify repairs. So if you could figure out logistically this 24-hour issue, and they can certify that, you know, next day, send you a picture, a certification email, what have you, then that might be a way to handle it. So you're going to have to, what I suggest is a crawl, walk, run approach to this. It's new to everybody. And as you kind of encounter these things, you figure out, okay, there are a lot more 24-hour life-threatening deficiencies in NSPIRE than there were in the past. So this is going to be something you really need to take a good look at on how are we as an organization going to handle these 24s. If you're doing physical re-inspections, then that's going to create a scheduling issue if you've got inspections scheduled for the next day somewhere else. I know I covered 60 counties when I did HQS inspections, and it was quite challenging sometimes. It may meant I drove out of the way to make sure this 24-hour got re-inspected, you know, during my day at some point. So it's definitely something there that you're going to have to figure out, you know, how we're going to handle these. And there's going to be a lot more because of the additional requirements for smoke alarms, CO alarms. Again, there are lots and lots of 24-hour deficiencies. So just take a kind of a think about it. How do we do it? And how are we going to incorporate actually physically re-inspecting these if that's the case? If you're doing the certifications, I think that's much less problematic because they can text, email, however you guys decide you want to accept that correspondence, you know, pictures or what have you to show something's been repaired. Another thing to consider as well is, you know, that's 24 hours. You know, that's not going to be the end of the world. I know if I had a 24-hour fail because I physically went back the next day and I found out they had not made the repair, that rent doesn't get stopped until the first of the next month. And so there's still additional time for that unit to be re-inspected prior to anything serious happening. So a lot of times that was the case. I had to come back a second time once they let me know, hey, it's done. It took 4 days instead of 24 hours, but I was able to go back after they requested a re-inspection and was able to go back on that 4th or 5th day and verify, yes, it's been fixed. And then, you know, we handled the other deficiencies in our normal manner. So there's several considerations there. Just going to have to take a look at how you're going to handle those within your own organizations. As far as verifying this December, this new requirement for hardwired and 10-year seals, it's going to be really hard for me to kind of explain that. We've talked about it quite extensively in our team. Our team is designed to transition all of REAC from UPCS to NSPIRE. And just so happens I have a lot of HQS experience. So we talked about how are we going to verify it's hardwired. I have to take it down. And we had hours of discussion, all the different ways to look at this and how we would know. And we all came back to the same conclusion. The only way I know for sure if a smoke alarm is hardwired is to see, is it hardwired? I mean, twist it, pull it out, see if it's connected, see if the hardwire is there. The 10-year sealed is less problematic because they're physically look different. They're thinner, majority of them, not all. They just look different than a regular smoke alarm. So what I would say, since the standard has not been published for this specific deficiency, we don't exactly know the requirements and the deficiencies. We just know that they need to be there. And they're going to need to be in the same locations as the standards that are currently published. So what we, you know, kicked around several different ways. We kind of came up with our idea of how we would do it. But we still don't know what the published version, the language is going to be on how we're actually, the inspection process, on how we're actually going to do that. So I think, again, this is going to be something, it's mandated by Congress. Everybody has to have them. And then we're just going to have to figure our way forward on whether or not we're able to tell they are or not. So I know that doesn't answer your question, but I definitely appreciate the question. It's definitely not going unnoticed by us, especially we're inspectors and we're charged of training inspectors. So we were like right in the front lines of figuring out how are we going to accomplish this. So hopefully some of that helps. Was there more there about smoke alarms or COs I needed to talk about?
No, hey, Bobby, it's Fitz. That's a great discussion. And just as we introduced earlier, we're going to have a specific smoke detector, smoke alarm session, webinar in December, because we recognize that this is an item. So just wanted to throw that out there so you could all put that on the docket. But in the interim, feel free to ask additional questions. Any follow-up to Bobby?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that and what Bobby said is correct. The 24-hour sort of re-inspection idea, if you cover a large area and you have a lot of these 24-hour failures, you know, HUD doesn't prescribe or say that you're required to go physically out and re-inspect that unit. So this is something that, you know, it is up to you to set policy or procedures on. So there are other options for you to verify that that correction has been made. So I just wanted to, you know, confirm that and make sure that everybody is getting that message. We're not saying that if all your inspections are 3 hours away and that you have to physically go out to each one of those, you know, every 24-hour period when they fail. There are other ways for you to verify that that correction has been made. So I highly encourage you to look into those options and get your admin plan updated with those types of options and those types of verifications.
Thanks for that, Dana. I think the other question that wasn't necessarily answered, Bobby, would be tied more into the carbon monoxide requirements. And to Fitz's point, we're also holding an office hour specifically on that in the next couple of months. But there are a handful of varied questions that are coming in still. I think everyone's kind of clarified that the smoke alarm and carbon monoxide requirements tied to NSPIRE are for inspection purposes, not set by NSPIRE. So these were congressional mandates. The extension notice that some of you may have seen to NSPIRE for Voucher, PBV, and HCV programs had an excerpt of that congressional requirement. If that would be useful to anybody that would like to see it, we can send that around as well. But for now, I just want to shift over to a couple of the other questions I think that are helpful that have come into the chat box. One person's asked, kind of in alignment, Bobby, with one of the questions you asked earlier about an access panel being in a separate unit. What if that access panel is in a room that also houses the mechanical equipment for the building and is not accessible? Is that also a failure?
Oh, well, thanks for that. I would consider, since HCV is centered around the unit, you're going to inspect the unit. So just like in a more commercial type building, you're not going to be inspecting a mechanical room necessarily for everything in the mechanical room and assign those deficiencies to your unit. So I would say it kind of falls under the same purview. Inside your unit is what you're inspecting. What you residents have access to is what you're inspecting. We don't have a requirement that the unit have a panel, but if one is there, we have 3 deficiencies for that panel, as well as all the other, health and safety type things that go along with those. So you don't have to access that area in order to inspect that unit.
Thanks, Bobby. Another question that's come in the chat is if we can explain a bit more of the differences on HQS, the old HQS standard versus NSPIRE around lead paint evaluations.
Yeah, there's no difference for you guys. You guys, HCV have been doing this for a really long time, and you're really good at it. And guess what? We're not. We gained this. This is one of the things Dana was talking about. They added these things from HQS to our normal REAC, and it significantly increased the amount of things for us. So I know optics wise, it may look like you're gaining a whole lot of brand new things, but realistically, there's only so many things could be wrong with a door, a floor, a wall, and a ceiling. So she's right in the fact that it lines up more with what you guys have always been doing than it does for what we were doing in REAC with multifamily and public housing. So to answer the question specifically, there's no change for you guys with respect to that program and how you're going to assess lead-based paint. It's still the same above and below. It's still the same kids under 6, the unit built before 78. You're just going to do the exact same thing you've always been doing.
Thanks so much, Bobby. Ahmed, could we go real quick? I see there's only a couple hands up to folks that have their hands up.
Jim Bowling. You're unmuted.
Hello, I'm sorry to chime in again. I should have asked this when I was on earlier, but Bobby knows from years working with KHC that we have such properties such as recovery centers that we house people in. Sometimes those have like several wings and they spread over several acres of property. Bobby, are you thinking with the NSPIRE V that we would walk that whole building as you and I used to do when we did the REAC inspections, or are we doing the direct route to the unit, that type of inspection? I mean, can you give any clarification with that on how we need to plan our time when we get to a certain property?
Yeah, and I think Dana will have something more just to add to whatever I say. But basically, you know, the old thing about you get out of your car and you inspect from the car along the path to the unit, and then at that property, if there are specific places the resident would go, like a laundry room, then you would include that in this. But you're not going to be going like a REAC inspection to every square inch. You know, there is a requirement to inspect the building, the outside of the building, because that is part of the unit, the outside. You are going to have to inspect like maybe a common area or restrooms, you know, that if it's set up that way where the restrooms are down the hall and not in the unit. So you may have to inspect those areas. But again, crawl, walk, run, kind of see how this stuff applies. You go out there and you attempt to do this inspection and you got all these questions. Take that back to your team and say, hey, these were my challenges. You know, let's get a game plan and, you know, at least your organization will know we're all going to attack these this way. And then as more information comes in, as people gain more experience, and as we put out more information, you can either take away or add to what you're already doing and kind of move forward in that way.
So in case I'm inspecting an apartment on the first floor, it's a 6-story high rise. Would I walk all the common areas on all 6 floors?
No, you would just go where the resident normally would go. And, you know, let's take that up to the 3rd floor. You'd probably want to check the stairwells because they may need those, right? The elevator, you're going to, you know, go up that, you know, those kinds of things. Use as much common sense as you can apply. That's going to, you know, with the intent of, we're looking at the residents' health and safety. So where they go is kind of where we want to go. Not every single place they can go, but everywhere they normally would go. And that's really where we want to try to confine it to at this point. And then again, as we all learn and move forward and grow into this program, then we'll update and modify as we gain new knowledge and information.
Gotcha. Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate on that, Jim. So the rules, I mean, the regulations and the rules say that for HCV and for PBV units, it's the unit that's assisted or to be assisted, and then for inside and outside areas, it's areas that are that service that unit. It's areas that, like Bobby said, that are pathways of travel for the resident. It's areas that the resident would use or could use, like commonly, like you said, laundry rooms, community rooms, and anything that provides a communicating opening for that unit. So if there were And I'm gonna get this technical part wrong, so maybe Bobby can come in. But like if a gas furnace does provide, if there's a communicating opening for that gas furnace, and that gas furnace is located somewhere not in a pathway of travel, you do need to inspect that area to be sure that you've got the carbon monoxide detector, you've got, you know, whatever it is that you need for that communicating opening. So that would be a case where a mechanical room might need to be inspected for a voucher, but it doesn't mean that the tenant, to other people's questions, it doesn't mean that the tenant needs access to it. It simply means that you would need access to it as the inspector. And the landlord may have to accompany you on that type of inspection if they typically keep it locked or not accessible.
So the key word is commonly, the commonly traveled path, not commonly traveled path, but common areas that would maybe commonly entered by the tenant. So like if I have like 4 wings on a recovery center and the one wing houses the people that we serve, I wouldn't necessarily need to inspect the north, south, and east wing if they're privy to the west wing, correct?
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
And I think again, I tripped up on it too. The used words are common, common areas, common pathways, and areas that service the unit.
Are frequented by. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. And the outside even is areas that service the unit. So
Gotcha.
even the outside, I would argue that you just have to focus on the outside of that wing.
Gotcha. You clarified. I appreciate it.
And Bobby, did I get that communicating opening right? I always trip up on that.
You got it perfectly. That's
okay.
You know, that's one thing that, you know, we'll kind of save that for the CO presentation that we do a little later on. But you're exactly right. If I'm going to assess a unit and the unit has no CO source in it, but the building does, I need to see how that source is protected before I go in the unit to determine what I need in my unit. So you're exactly right. But hopefully we'll be able to provide a lot more detail under the CO presentation when we do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And as Bobby said, I would just remember to have, and HUD thinks this way too. I mean, we know that this is new. Have some grace with yourself, have some, you know, we know there's room for error. You know, our REAC inspectors have experienced it too. So this isn't something we're expecting you're going to get 100% perfect 100% of the time. So we know this is going to be going to have a steep learning curve. So just, yeah, like you said, use the best common sense you have, and let's see what lessons we can learn from it.
Well, I think my dilemma comes in, as Bobby's would too, is Bobby and I both, we did the REAC inspections when Bobby's with KHC. So we were kind of used to going behind every locked door, you know, every stairwell. We were walking every inch of a building. So
right.
You know, that's where the confusion came in. We just want to make sure that everybody on our team, you know, that we're not spending an extra couple hours in the building if we don't necessarily have to, as busy as everybody is in the counties we serve.
Right. And it's unlearning some of that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jim and Dana and Bobby, thank you for jumping in on all that. And thank you everyone for your questions and interaction today. We have a lot of questions in the chat, which we will try to answer and get out to you all. Good dialogue. Ahmed, if I could ask you to go back a slide or so, I just want to pull up the resource. If you could give us some feedback, that would be great in terms of this particular event so that we can improve them and what have you. Can you go back another slide? One more, please. And just a list of information. One of the things I wanted to point out here is that we have a listing here of the May 28th voucher webinar that we did, Inspire for Voucher webinar. We also did, you can see that link here for July 16th. These are detailed events that talked about policy and standards and going a little bit more detailed, which may help some of the questions that were in the chat. These have been recorded and you can watch those events. And we have the upcoming webinars as well as the office hour sessions to really continue this dialogue and focus on not only like training and lecturing type events, but also these kind of interactive sessions as well. So At this point, I want to thank everyone on the panel and the SMEs that chimed in, just great dialogue. I also want to thank everyone on the call for your raised hands and your questions, as well as the questions in the chat. And we look forward to continue to grow together and to learn together and, drive the NSPIRE program across the voucher portfolio. So on behalf of the department, I want to say thank you, and we look forward to working together rolling forward. Bye now.
This event has concluded. Thank you for joining. You may now disconnect.